What's going on, guys? Welcome to another incredible episode of Vigilantes Radio Live, right here on iHeartRadio, Roku TV, um, and all of our friends and family worldwide. Thank you so much for checking out the show live with us. We have a very special guest for you guys. Before I introduce our guest, I do want to say that your life is like software, built layer by layer, but vulnerable at the seams. If you don't secure what matters most in a world, where technology evolves faster than trust, we are asking, how do you protect your dreams, your data, and your destiny? Our guest today isn't just building defenses in the digital realm, he is pioneering security from the future of AI and fintech. And this isn't just radio. This is revival for your mind, body, and spirit. This is Vigilantes Radio Live. My name is Coach Dini, and change is possible. I hope you're ready. Today's guest is a digital guardian, innovator, shaping the future of application security. As a principal security engineer at Upgrade Inc., he's leading efforts to secure not just software systems, but AI powered platforms in a rapidly evolving world. From mastering penetration testing tools to developing threat models for GraphQL APIs and large language models, his expertise is unmatched, and his story is about vision, precision, and impact. So, please join me in saying welcome, friend, to our special guest, Nayan Goel.
Hey, Denny. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, man. And it's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be on the show.
Absolutely, man. I am excited that you are here with us tonight. First and foremost, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
All right. Well, it's nice to meet you, Nayan. Uh, what's been on your heart and mind lately as you reflect on the fast pace of technology and the work that you are doing to secure it?
Yeah, actually, being a security engineer is always a lot on my mind. But currently, it's mostly about this paradox, like technology is evolving faster than ever, but the human understanding, especially around the field of security, is struggling to keep up, right? I mean, every innovation opens a new attack surface, and it just keeps me thinking a lot about responsibility and how every single line of code that we ship out has this ripple effect, right? And on a personal level, I feel like there's a deep responsibility to not just secure systems, but to build trust in technology, right? That's what's really really important. And you know what they say about trust, right? Trust is fragile, right? And once broken, it's hard to regain. And especially with the world of AI, right? I mean, already people are not very receptive of AI as much as it's evolving, the speed at which it's evolving, and any sort of like security lapse in that is just only gonna break that trust. So we have to be really careful when we're dealing with technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just talking with a friend of mine just about that. When we had, Windows 98
Mhm.
or Windows XP, Windows Vista, these were programs that we could fix easily if something went wrong technically. They were it was easy to fix. The programming was, at least I thought. But now on my PC, uh, everything is cloud based.
Yeah,
And he
that's
asked
right.
me one day, he's like, "What happens if the cloud goes down, or if we have a cyber attack?" I said, "Well, there are
Yeah.
guys who know way more than we do, who are figuring these problems out for us and coming up with solutions." And that's primarily what you focus on, but in a big box scenario when it comes to business
Mhm.
uh, or commerce, anything like that.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
mean, yeah, so you got to be very careful right now. All your data is not just in your local system, it's in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
So if it falls in the hands of the wrong people, right, you're going to lose every single piece of information there is about you.
Mhm.
So you got to be even more careful these days.
Yeah. So let's rewind the time for a little bit. You've journeyed from India to Silicon Valley. Initially, what first sparked your passion for cybersecurity?
Yeah, actually, honestly, it started with curiosity, right? And I mean, I started off with my bachelor's in software engineering, and then, we used to build a lot of web applications, right? But me, I was always intrigued with how you could they could be broken, right? And
Mhm.
this is one day we had this little tool, you may call it like a tool or an application for our school, wherein you can, it's a portal where you can log in. It's a student portal. You can see, all your information. You can see your marks, and you can see, a bunch of other things. So and I was playing around with it, and I was able to, essentially hack, quote unquote, and get admin access to that. And I was able to see information for literally every single student who was studying at my institute, and every single past student as well. And and with that, exactly, with that level of information, that not just instilled fear in me, but it sparked this purpose. I was like, I realized if this information falls in the hands of wrong people, they could essentially do something bad with it. And I think that's the time that planted a seed for my cybersecurity career.
Wow, man, that's an incredible start. Did they give you a job?
Sadly not on campus, but I did get it patched though.
Yeah, yeah. Experience is the best teacher, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I imagine that Silicon Valley is a melting pot of the most brilliant people from around the world, if possible. What was the biggest challenge in adapting to such different cultures in tech?
Yeah, I mean, the like you said, right? The pace and the expectations in Silicon Valley are intense, right?
Mm,
And back in India, the engineering education is rigorous, but it's often theoretical, right? I mean, they teach you a lot of things. They teach you different aspects of engineering, and the course is huge. It's vast, but it's very theoretical, right? And here, it's all about execution. It's all about speed. It's all about ownership. And and back in India, when you're working, right, if you want to ship a piece of code, you need to get approvals. You need to make sure that everything is okay with your mentor, with your manager. But here, it's all about ownership, right? And that adapting really meant unlearning that hesitation, right, and learning to speak up, and learning to move fast, and also own my own outcomes. Because the thing is, being a security engineer, if a vulnerable piece of code ships outside, it's no one else's responsibility. It's my responsibility, and I am the person who needs to own the outcome of that. So that's something that I've had to learn, and it was really tough at first. But
yeah.
once you get used to it, it's really, really empowering.
Wow. Wow. All right. And do you keep those same principles in the way that you approach security today?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I always try to work with developers, and I'm always, whenever I see a vulnerability, I'm trying to get that fixed. Because if this vulnerability goes out into the wild, it can be exploited by bad people. And in the field that I'm working with in fintech, it's really, really a critical field, and you can't afford a security lapse in this field, essentially.
Yeah. So starting with penetration testing. Um, what's one what's one unforgettable vulnerability that you discovered early on with this type of testing?
Yeah. So when I was right out of my master's, I was interning at a company, and it was a security consultancy company, and I was working as a penetration tester and a security consultant. So we had clients with a bunch of we had big companies who were our clients, and either they didn't have like a dedicated security team, so they came to us to review their application, or B, they were just trying to check a box for compliance purposes and stuff like that. So one such big fast food chain, I'm not going to take any names,
Mhm.
was our client. They came in for a security penetration test, and essentially the vulnerability that I discovered was, so when you put items in your cart and you try to order it online, So when let's say you added like I don't know hundreds of French fries and some Coke and stuff, and it's $120 bill, and you check out, right? It sends you the total amount for your bill. Essentially, they tokenize it and send it up front. So the next request you make, the backend knows that this is the amount that I need to charge this credit card. They send that to the payment gateway. So essentially, what I did was I started two different sessions. With one singular session, I ordered a $2 French fry, and on the other one, I ordered a $200 or some $220 a whole, like a bunch of things, right? And I just exchanged the tokens. So essentially, I was able to order $220 worth of stuff for $2, and that was one of the critical vulnerabilities I found in their system. They were actually coming in for a routine check, but they ended up getting like a full-fledged penetration done with us, and then yeah.
Yeah. Um, how do you see software systems now? Did that redefine the moment for you?
Oh yeah, I mean that absolutely did. Before that, I used to think of software as code, but now I
Mm.
think it's really taught me that security is more about context. It's not just about code, and tools are essential, right? You can have automated tools that are looking at your code and scanning for vulnerabilities, and you can have some dynamic assessment tools that are looking at the application and scanning for vulnerabilities, but they can't look at the application the way a human can. They can't understand the application the way the human can, because all of these hackers and like bad actors out in the wild are trying to exploit the business logic of things. They're trying to break the flow of the entire application, right?
Hmm.
They're trying to break how things are working. They're trying to see where they can inject themselves in order to gain an advantage over the app itself. So you got to think of it in terms of the context, and that's really changed the way I see software at this point.
Yeah. Nayan, do you ever miss the hands-on uh thrill of figuring things out from every vantage point and maybe even of breaking things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's this unique satisfaction in unraveling a system.
Yeah.
It's just unparalleled. But I still do it time to time. I mean, it's still part of my job, and I do it from time to time. But it's just that the rush, the feeling you get when you break into a system and you're able to find a vulnerability. It's just the adrenaline is just crazy. But
Yeah.
I've loved. I've evolved to love the strategic part even more, honestly. I'm designing the defenses and anticipating those attacks, staying one step ahead, and even going as far as mentoring others, and building systems that can actually scale security across the entire organization. So I've come to love that even more, honestly.
Nice, nice. So you've pioneered threat modeling for GraphQL APIs. What makes GraphQL so different from traditional REST APIs?
Yeah, I actually recently had a GraphQL paper published that talks about threat modeling on GraphQL APIs. And GraphQL is unique. I mean, it was the whole purpose why GraphQL was designed was so that so the way REST APIs work is they have one singular purpose, right? You make that API call, it's going to give you data pertaining to that API, right? It's going to do its own function, and then it's going to just sit quietly. But GraphQL, and then if you want to do multiple operations, fetch multiple data, you'd have to, call multiple different APIs and hit the backend server. So a clever way was GraphQL, wherein you call one singular API and you request all the data at once, right? And then you let the UI handle all that data and handle it from there. So that feature is also a big security risk, because now you're subjecting yourself to data exfiltration. And if somebody can access a lot more data in a single query, there are different attacks that are possible. There is nested queries which can exhaust your system resources and lead to some sort of a denial of service attack. There are things like data exfiltration, which I already spoke about. And the biggest issue with GraphQL is authentication and authorization. Authorization being the key factor here, because with in the REST world, right, you can slap an authorization straight on the API level and call it a day, right? Because
Mhm.
it's only returning data that you've programmed it to return. But with GraphQL, it's not like that. I mean, let's say you have a profile, right? And then you click on that profile that shows you information about you. Let's say it's an insurance company, right? So it has a bunch of information about you, and it's only showing you like your name and your email address and your phone number, right? But it's collected other information from you, and like your address and your zip and stuff like that, but it's not showing it to you. But that with GraphQL, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't access it. You can still request for it if that data is exposed in that graph. So you need to add the right authorization at the field level. You need to go very granular with GraphQL, and it's really challenging when you're dealing with GraphQL queries and mutations.
Indeed. What about specific vulnerability that you've encountered?
With GraphQL, oh yeah, this is interesting one. Again, in my previous company, there was this insurance company that had come up, and they were using GraphQL for a GraphQL architecture, and they had basically, you log in, you can click on your profile and you can see all your information, just like the example I was talking about before, right? And during the sign up process, they did ask me for my social, my bank account information and stuff like that, and I was kind of intrigued, if I can extract that info. So I tried a bunch of things on their profile query. I tried social security, I tried SSN, I tried social under security, a bunch of different patterns, but I couldn't get anything. So that reminded me that GraphQL also has introspection, wherein you can go and read the actual schema. And lucky for me, that was their introspection was enabled, so I could actually see the skeleton of their schema. So I
Hmm.
knew exactly what parameters they're exposing. And there it was S_S_N. And I just typed that in, and I could see my social security. And I could see my bank account information, which they weren't sure they aren't supposed to show it to the UI. And more than that, I was able to change the variable, the IDs that they were using. They gave us like account IDs. So basically, you can switch it to another person's account ID. And when I put that in the request, I could see their social and their bank account information as well. And that's the problem with GraphQL. You need to have the correct authorizations in place. Otherwise, anybody can access anybody's data at that point.
All right. So, how should companies going forward adapt their security strategies for GraphQL?
Oh, in terms of security strategies, I would say, firstly, you got to start with all the global preventions you can put in place, right? Things like query complexity limits and query depth restrictions. Also, query width restrictions or alias restrictions, you may call it, like you can have X number of aliases and stuff. Then you can have some sort of schema hardening, disable introspection in your production. These are all very basic, low-hanging fruits that any company can just enable on their server. It can be applied globally, and you don't really have to work hard towards implementing it. But the actual when you're actually trying to secure like the actual application, you need to do proper input validation on every single input you receive from your customers, or whoever's interacting, or actors who are interacting with the application. You need to make sure that you have authorization not just at the query and mutation level, but at every single field level, to make sure that you're not exposing more data than you should. You're not allowing people to access other people's information. A lot of vulnerabilities arise from custom scalars as well. People love to define custom scalars, and if you have a bad regex, then it could cause regex breaches, can cause DDoS. I mean, RDoS attack, or it could also lead to things like if your regex isn't strong enough, if it could lead to possible injection attacks, SQL injection, or even cross-site scripting and stuff. So yeah, I mean, you just need to make sure that you have fine-grained access control at the schema level, and then that should be good enough. Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes. I guess you couldn't hear me. But what I was asking, what I was saying is that we are in a fast moving world.
Yeah.
We are immersed in AI technology. It's here, it's evolving, and I'm glad that guys like you understand the system, or create different outcomes that we can't really see or understand because we're not in that space, but you are. So you're actively working on threat models for AI platforms. What's unique about securing large language models and generative AI?
Oh yeah, I mean, securing LLMs in generative AI, it requires a paradigm shift, honestly, and you can't think of them as traditional, application security. It's unlike traditional applications that are deterministic, right? You can determine their outcome. These models are completely non-deterministic, right? I mean, you can go to ChatGPT today and type, write an email to my teacher asking for leave. It's going to give you something else, and you ask it literally 10 seconds later, it's going to give you another answer, right? So the non-deterministic, you cannot predict their output. You cannot predict what the result's going to be. And this is simply because they're context driven, and they operate on probabilistic inference spaces. So essentially you really can't determine what the output's going to be. So sure, unlike traditional applications, you're not just validating inputs and outputs anymore. You're dealing with like emergent behaviors, right? And things like prompt manipulation and data leakage via inference and stuff like that. So there are a set of unique challenges that come with it. I mean, to name a few, there's this prompt injection. I think anyone in the tech space who's reading about AI would have heard prompt injection a lot. So it really doesn't require a lot of explanation. It's just any sort of malicious input from a user, or, in order to try to hijack like a system's behavior. And and then there are other challenges, like your training data could get leaked, right? If you use sensitive data to train your model on, you really need to enforce data governance at that point, because you can't it could lead to leakage of that data. And there are attacks that, like indirect prompt manipulation. The attackers don't really need direct access to the LLM. If they are able to poison the context of the LLM, either via embeddings, or like vector DBs, or any sort of like a user generated RAG pipelines and things like that, you could really manipulate the prompts. And
Yeah.
there's another big challenge, which I think is the biggest one, which is over permissive model actions, right? I mean, at this point, LLMs generally are just they're agents that understand our language, and they generate content. Right? They understand, they generate. In order to empower an AI agent to do a task, you need to give it a tool, right? So let's say you want to create an agent that looks at the weather report and sends you an email every morning telling you what clothes you need to wear, or whether you need to carry an umbrella outside and stuff like that, right? You need an agent like that. So now this agent, in order to read the weather, needs access to the weather channel. Or it needs an access to an application that can give it weather data. So you need to connect either like some sort of Google widget, or weather, AccuWeather, or some other API. You need to connect that to your AI agent. So now that's a tool for this agent. Now let's say you wanted to send you an email, right? Now for that you need to connect your Gmail to your AI agent. Now, once you connect your Gmail, you're going to give it access to send emails on your behalf, obviously, because you're going to get emails from it, right? If you log in with your own account. Now, what's to say that that AI agent doesn't send me an email tomorrow that Denny thinks, Nayan, you're wonderful, and I want you to host tomorrow's show, right? You
Mm,
can never be sure of that.
yeah.
So that's why I say when you give overly permissive permissioning, or yeah, overly permissive model actions essentially to an AI agent. So you need to control the permissions, or the scope of permissions you give to your agent to do the actions either on your behalf or someone else's behalf, to make sure that they can't go out of their boundary and use other functionalities.
Man, how can engineers design AI systems with security in mind from day one?
Um, I think see, the thing is, yeah. So security by design is really, really important, right? I mean, firstly, you got to do like the basics, right? Let's start with the basics. Let's do like input and output validations, right?
Mm,
Just like you have fields, form fields in web apps, AI needs some sort of an input schema, right? We have those right now. We have profanity filters built into these LLM models. We have these checks and reinforcements in these models, and we need to provide some sort of a context to these models. So there needs to be some sort of context whitelisting as well, and this is especially needed for like a multimodal system, or like or natural language interfaces. So that's really important. um, then yeah, like I was talking about earlier, right? Least privilege execution, right? When you're giving access to of a tool to an LLM, you need to give it least privileged access that's needed for it to perform its duty, right? You can't go ahead and give it admin access to every single tool that it has access to, otherwise it can literally call any single API that it needs to. uh, Prompt isolation could be another thing that you can keep in your mind when you're trying to design AI systems. Because if you can use sandbox contexts, let's say for high risk prompts, right, or some sort of chain of thought reasoning, then that's pretty cool. Uh, Another really, really important thing I would say is auditing and telemetry, and I can't stress enough. Every single prompt, every single tool call, every single output, and the thought process of the your AI agent needs to be logged, and you need and version obviously, and you need to tie it to a user session, right? Because you need to know, uh, in case there is an incident, right? You need the ability to roll things back. That's why versioning comes into place. You need to do forensic analysis as to why, what, and when it happened, and how to fix it. That's where logging comes into place. So you really need that. And I think last thing would be red teaming of AI. Like if you can, if your team is capable enough to do a penetration test on AI applications that you've developed,
mm.
that's wonderful, because nothing like it. Because if actual ethical hackers are trying to break into that app and trying to find flaws in it, it's going to work, because that's they're actually testing your integration in your system and not just a general security check. So that's another thing that they can do.
Yeah. Um, this is a new term for me, shifting left. What's the most common mistake companies make when they shift left?
Yeah, I mean, so shifting left is essentially, you take so how basically it's about a production cycle, right? So you have a product. Let's say you are trying to launch a clothing website, right, today. So firstly, you sit with the team, you make a design, like, this is how I want this application to be, and this is our backend, this is the front end tech stack, and this is what we're going to do, and this is the user flow. Now the coders are going to, the developer team is going to code on that, right? And then the QA team is going to test on that, and then you deploy it, right? And then somewhere over here comes security team that's actually going to, look at the security of this application before it gets deployed, right? So it starts from the left, goes all the way to the right, right? So right is where the security team comes in at the last. You want to shift it left. You want to make security all the way left to the start of the phase, right? If you involve people from security during the design phase, they can help in determining a secure design. If you integrate tools for your code scanning, then they can detect vulnerabilities in your code while you're coding, or while you're building your code. If you have an automated dynamic scan, you can add that at right after your when the QA is testing your application. So there are things like that where you can shift left, so security is not the last thing that comes into the picture, and that's what shift left is. And the most common mistake is basically, I think most organizations, right, they treat security like a compliance checkbox
Mhm.
instead of an asset that could enable developers, right? And
Right.
simply embedding a SaaS or a DAS tool into your CI/CD pipeline doesn't shift left unless developers are actually trained to understand, what is an actual vulnerability versus what's a false positive and what's not valid for us. And even if we find that, there needs to be service level agreements that need to be set regarding remediations, because what's the point of finding a vulnerability if you can't fix it in time? So there needs to be
Mm,
SLAs that are based on criticalities, right? Like if it's a critical issue, we need it fixed by tomorrow. If it's a high issue, you can take 3 days. If it's a low issue, okay, fine, you can fix it in a sprint or 2 weeks or whatever it may be, right? So you need to have strong service level agreements that define uh, when this finding needs to be fixed by. So that's really important when you're shifting left. And yeah, I think that's one of the big mistakes that companies make.
yeah. How do you convince developers to, that security isn't just roadblocks?
Yeah, I've learned that you got to speak the language. Honestly, if you talk about the speed or the velocity at which this code can be shipped, or you talk about the stability of the platform, or you talk about the predictability of the outcomes, they tend to listen to you honestly. And I mean, I've actually found success. If when I work with them, right? Like I talk about their pain points, right? We have meetings
Mhm.
with developers all the time. We talk about the pain points. How can security not be a bottleneck for you, and how we can help you, right? And like one of the pain points that a lot of developers spoke to me about was all of these low hanging fruits in like let's say you have we use a bunch of libraries in our code. Everyone uses libraries, right? And there are like findings report or security vulnerabilities reported in these, and they are reported as a CVE that comes out. And these vulnerable libraries have actual security flaws in them. And if you're using them, you could be susceptible to those risks. So you got to update these libraries to the latest version, essentially. So they didn't really like doing that on a regular basis. You have to go in, you have to pull, you have to, update it, you have to check whether, it's passing all the regression tests and a bunch of things. So I automated that entire thing. I wrote a script that does that for them. It identifies the vulnerable libraries, updates it, does the QA test. If it fails, then it involves them. If it doesn't, then it just pushes it. So that's how you find the pain points and you try to automate things. And if you also embed like security tools in their daily workflows, if you embed like a SaaS scanner in the IDE or in the build pipeline itself, they are more and you don't make it like a separate dashboard where they have to go look for it or like find for those findings every single time. It just becomes a part of their workflow, and they tend to not procrastinate to go and open up another dashboard. Nobody likes doing that. So that has also helped a lot to convince them that security is not a roadblock.
Indeed, indeed. Do you consider that a success story?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is there was this one time. Uh, so during the build pipeline, we identified one of our scanners. It identified a high severity server-side request forgery issue. And during the feature rollout itself, right, we were able to find out like way before we even got anywhere close to production, right, in the QA cycles. And we caught this. And because of this, right, and the developer could see it because it's his workflow, right? He's trying to build that application and goes through some regression tests and stuff like that. And the test, and at that point, the scanner test failed. So he was able to see right then and there why it failed, and since he had context of the application, he was able to understand why that issue happened and how to fix it. And that's why training your developers and providing them these tools to use on a regular basis. If you just integrate it, then they use it and they have more context, and that issue never even reached us, right? The dev was able to just fix it, and that's what completely shifting left means. That dev is independent enough to recognize those low hanging fruits, to recognize those findings and fix it, so it doesn't even reach the last stage of the security review, essentially.
For sure. And at Upgrade Inc., you've built metrics driven systems for app security. Why is data so crucial for improving security practices?
Yeah, I would say I think metrics and data in general, right? It helps you move from this gut feeling to a quantified risk, right? I mean, you can have a gut feeling about something, but unless until you actually see the data, you look at the metrics, you can't really quantify it, right? And things like MTTR, like mean time to remediation. it tells you if your organization can handle 0-day vulnerabilities, right? I mean, if your MTTR is like 3 weeks, you can't handle a 0-day vuln because it's going to get exploited. So things like the percentage of vulnerabilities that are caught pre-production versus post-production. This shows how mature your secure development lifecycle is, and these are the kind of metrics that can help you decide on the agenda for your security team. What do you need to work on, and what are the different projects you need to take up in the next plan, or the next quarter, or the next year, or in the future, in order to strengthen your position, and your application. And it also helps identify the gaps in your security preventions that you may have.
Yeah. But how do you get teams to buy into these metrics?
Um, Buy-in is always hard. So, I tend to co-create these metrics with the teams, right? These metrics are more so for every single engineer, including developers, including the QA team, and us, the security team. So, you got to work with you got to work with the teams and not really impose these metrics on them, right? And I essentially hold like working sessions where the dev team and the product team and QA team and all of us, we agree on some shared goals, right? Like there could be a huge number of false positives arising from these tools, right? These security scanners are pretty notorious for doing that, so I don't blame them. So we have
Mm.
a same goal of reducing these false positives, because even I want to reduce that, or by, let's say, by X%, right? And then, or you want to increase the scan speed by Y%, or like Z%. And I want these scans to run faster, so these scans finish fast, and I'm not stuck waiting for them to finish. So these are certain shared goals that you can work with the teams and set up metrics around that. And in these, you can squeeze some of your own metrics. They squeeze in some of their own metrics that are essential to them, and then you create like these dashboards that people can look at, and from there you can decide what needs to be done, essentially, when you read that data. And yeah, and essentially you also need to think about the metrics that matter to dev a lot.
Yeah. And if you had to distill your leadership philosophy into one sentence, what would it be?
Oh, you really put me on the spot there, huh? Uh, with in one line, I would say this, and this is something I think I learned from all of my managers, right? You got to lead with clarity. You got to empower your team with trust, and you have to foster collaboration. And I think I believe in that like 100%.
Absolutely. I love it. You've once said securing software is about protecting people. How does that belief guide your work?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me that security is personal, right? I mean, for me, who's working as an engineer at an organization, a lot of us, tend to get lost in the code, in the application of things, and we stop thinking about who this application is for and how a security lapse can impact somebody's entire life, right? And I mean, that's why it just reminds me how security is personal. And vulnerability to me isn't just a CVSS score, right? It could mean somebody's user identity being stolen, right? Or somebody's finances being compromised, right? And I mean, a breach doesn't just affect systems; it affects someone's, like money, their identity, even their safety, right? If somebody's address or something gets disclosed, it could be a safety issue as well. So when I secure an application, right? I mean, I'm protecting someone's story from actually, being rewritten by an attacker. That's what I think it's like. And I often ask myself, if this system fails, who is going to suffer from it and how? And that really helps me push the agenda of the security team and all the prevention that we're asking for in place.
And that's what you do if you're faced with pushback.
Oh yeah, I mean, so that's the thing about security, right? People think that the bottlenecks, where the guards were stopping things from going to production. But and that's why security often competes with go-to-market timelines essentially. But I've actually faced situations where people would want to push certain feature out to production because it's they have to meet the timelines with maybe a medium severity issue or something like that. But my approach has always been to quantify the risk, right, and offer secure alternatives, right? If you can provide them an alternative to work with, and understand, and if you can quantify the risk, that's the most important thing, right? Because certain risks are remediated down the line or by other preventions you may have in place. So it might not necessarily be a risk for you. So you need to quantify it, right? You need to add some sort of like in our world, it's called a CVSS score. It's out of 10. Anything above 7 is it's a high, and 9 or 10 is a critical. And you give it a score. So now you quantify it. So if it's a medium or a high or a critical, you need to fix it. You can't go to market. So things like that. You quantify it, and then you suggest alternatives. You can't just say just don't block it. Don't say no, this is not going to production, right? You need to work with them, suggest alternatives, and that's how you foster collaboration with them. And yeah, and in my experience, I've seen that security professionals or good security professionals, they listen first, they align second, and then they escalate at the end, right? Like that's how it needs to be at all times.
Wow. What keeps you motivated on tough days?
You know, I think in terms of motivations, right? Like working, I'm working. So the reason why I chose fintech in this first place, as a security engineer, you can work in a wide variety of technical spaces, and I wanted to join the fintech space because I wanted to make impact where it's the most important to me, right? I mean, this is somebody's money, and it could really affect their life. So knowing that I'm working on a mission that's bigger than me keeps me motivated a lot. And also like mentoring the junior engineers, or the dev teams, and seeing like all the security knowledge instilled into them, and them growing into engineers with security focused mindset. That's incredibly fulfilling, man. Like it's really nice. And every single patch, or like on a model that I improve, it protects people I may never meet, right? But it's fine. I mean, it's cool. At least it gives me purpose essentially.
Wow. And as AI and fintech grow, what do you see as the next big frontier in application security?
Yeah, I mean, let's start with AI powered detection and response, right? At this point, our detection and response, like in every organization these days, is it's not context aware, right? You're working off of certain static fields of static values that you've seen in the past, and everything is working off of that. Like whether it be a source code, whether it be anything else, they're working off static regex patterns or something like that. But with AI powered detection and response, you can actually have context aware agents that detect not just anomalies but also intent behind that. So that could be really nice, and I think that's one of the big frontiers. um, and the second thing is, I mean, that's even now it's a big frontier is supply chain security, and this is for both software and AI models. I mean, I can't stress this enough. Supply chain security is usually a weak link in a lot of organizations, so that's really important when you're making an application. Uh, I think another one could be a privacy preserving architectures, right? I mean, so like data integrity in the world of like AI, and people training their models based off of this data, right? It's really important to have some sort of data governance set up, and this privacy preserving architecture is another frontier that we need to look into.
Yeah. It is said there will be war and rumors of war. So that brings me to my next question. As we evolve as people, technology evolves. So do threats. Nayan, are we really ready for the threats of tomorrow?
Oof, that's a loaded bullet. I would say. I mean, to be honest, technically, no. Organizationally, absolutely not. Like, there's no way. I mean, most organizations, most in the world, are reactive, right? I mean, they respond to vulnerabilities. They're responding to CVEs rather than forecasting, the adversary capabilities, essentially. And it's not to their own fault, right? It's how things work. I mean, it's very hard to anticipate a security flaw from happening unless you're constantly researching and looking for things. And organizations are not spending a lot of time and effort on that because they're building products and they're trying to secure their products. So that's how it usually is. And with AI, that could be possible, right? Because now your AI can actually try to predict things that may happen before it even happens based off of past trends and stuff, right? So but at the same time, AI being used in defense can also be used in offense, right? It's just a matter of defenders need better tooling, they need better talent, and they need leadership buy-in in order to secure their applications.
Wow. So what needs to change now?
Um, I would say, if not already, I mean, security definitely needs to shift into product design conversations. Every single design review or every new product that is being designed needs to have some sort of security buy-in in it. And it can't just be another audit checklist on for organizations. That's my feeling. Um, Around AI, we need strict regulations. These regulations need to evolve around AI-centric applications and not just web vulnerabilities. So that's another thing that needs to change. And a lot of like the talent that we have, the developers and the engineering talent that we have, we need to focus a lot on AI, cloud, and security. So we need like this hybrid, a match of this hybrid skill, which has an in-depth knowledge of how all of these three things are working, and that change could be really nice.
Yes, yes. If you could teach one security principle to every aspiring engineer, what would it be?
I would say every system is breachable, right? You can't create a perfect system. So I would say design for resilience, not for perfection, because it's the thing is security isn't about making attacks impossible. It's you can't do that. There could always be some vulnerability that comes in. So security isn't about making attacks impossible. It's about making them detectable, containable, and fast. You need to contain it fast and also recoverable. You need to be like super fast recovery. So if you can do these three things, uh, that's great.
Is that a way that they can stand out in the cybersecurity field?
Standard in the cybersecurity field, as an individual, I would say you need to first you need to know how to build things, right? If you know how something is built, you can possibly figure out how to break it, right? I mean, not a lot of people can think like attackers, but if you can build something and if you can break that thing and you know how to fix it, you can be a good cybersecurity professional. And I would also say, write code, right? Like a lot of security engineers are, they don't code or they're afraid to code. Write a lot of code, contribute to open source projects, participate in capture the flag events, do bug bounty programs. That's really going to help enhance your skills and put you on the map, even because if you're able to find like certain good vulnerabilities in all of these applications that are on bug bounty, you get bounty for it, and also you get recognition. So that's going to help you stand out. And please, please, please do it in an ethical manner. If you find a vulnerability, report it. Do not go and exploit it. It's not going to go well. So try to do it in an ethical manner. That's all I'll say.
Yes, yes. Now let's talk about your legacy. I know you're still young, man, and you're still changing the way that cybersecurity works for AI in that space. But what legacy do you want to leave behind in this space?
Oof. Never thought about that, honestly. I mean, I would say, in terms of legs, right? I personally, I just want to be known as someone, who helped make security accessible and scalable, right? And somebody who was able to bridge the gap between engineering and ethics, because uh, you need to be a person who's not just, and also a person who didn't just care about the exploits, but also about the impact it has on actual people who are using these applications. So yeah, I think if I'm known for that, then that would be a win for me.
Yes, indeed, indeed. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in today. Nayan Goel gave us a masterclass in securing not just our software, but our future, from GraphQL APIs to AI systems. His insights remind us that security isn't a feature, it's a responsibility. If this conversation opened your mind, follow Nayan's journey and learn more about his work at Upgrade Inc. Subscribe to the show at Vigilantes Radio Live. And for more fearless dialogues, drop us a rating, share this episode, and support the mission. You're not just here for a talk show, and this isn't just radio. This is revival for your mind, body, and spirit. My name is Coach Dini, and change is possible. Are you ready? Let them know if you can, where they can connect with you on the internet. If you want to give your information out, Nayan.
Yeah, feel free to contact me on my LinkedIn. It's Nayan Goel. It's spelled Nayangoel, and would love to hear from all of you.
All right. And I'll include that link in the description of this episode and in the show notes. So all you guys have to do is just click the link and connect with Nayan. All right, Mr. Nayan Goel, thank you so much. Talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks, Zane. Thanks for having me on the show, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
You too, man. Take care.
It's here.